بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Our subject is about Marji'iyah and the role it play in giving services to the Shia World in particular and the Muslim world in general. Before we start with that, there is a question always asked that why there is no special administration, special system, special group of people who are there and they can always nominate the marja' after death of the previous marja'. They call it المرجعية المؤسساتية, the مؤسسة, the organization. Well, the answer for this, first of all, such system is already available, but it is not appointed by anybody. We say the marja' is elected or nominated by whom? Either the first way, you say the person himself, he knows who is senior most, so he follow him. Secondly, if two just witness, they say that Mr. So-and-so is the senior most marja' of the time. And the third way, in which we call Shia. Shia means those who are educated, or let us say a mujtahid, or nearly to be a mujtahid in the Hawza, group of 50, 60, 70, 40, etc. A group of people, when they say that according to our view, Mr. So-and-so is the next marja' after death of the previous marja'. So that by itself is a system. It is an organization. But it is not official body, yes. Now the problem, if we make it official body, what will happen? Now, the quarrel starts whom to be nominated in that body. Suppose you say there is a group of 50 people, like Parliament, for example, say 200 members of the country are elected in the Parliament. So you say 50 people are to be elected and those 50 will decide the coming marja'. Now again, the question will come, what are the quality of those 50 people and how each one of them you can make sure that he is suitable, and how can you prevent interference of the superpowers, big powers, political powers, governmental powers, corrupt people through propaganda, through pressure, through any way, to put 1, 2, 3 people there to talk. And again, when there is a group of people, some of them are maybe very fluent in talking, others may not be fluent, and if they are not accepting what he says, they just keep it quiet, do not declare that they do not agree with what he says. So ultimately the election of the new marja' will be in a wrong way, because some people through certain forces, they try to bring mind of others toward one marja'. And that which is very risky, because ultimately the new marja' will be in hand of certain powers infiltrating to them. Now power, sometimes power of people, and people can be motivated by media, by propaganda, and propaganda is done by sometimes the power of the enemy, or even if the friends, but they have their own certain benefits. So again, it will not be pure and correct selection of the marja' who is senior most, who is just, and who is known by most of the, let us say, ulama, scholars who are in Hawza, and all of them without somebody infiltrating them or convincing them or putting them under influence, political, money, verbal, threatening, harassment. Well, there are different problems might happen. In some governments there is harassment that you have to appoint that as a marja', otherwise you will be killed. As For example, time of Saddam, the people had no freedom. You can't say who, if the government wants somebody, the rest are afraid. So that can infiltrate the system of Marji'iyah and ultimately lead to the wrong marji' to come into power. But if it is by natural selection, and it is every individual himself will decide for himself, there is no force to guide him to anywhere. It is between him and God. If he is not, as usual, a scholar to know who is the marji', well, general public are not usually. So he may ask two just people, and those who are just, naturally, they will guide him. If both guide him to one person and there is no contradiction of view, if two just people say Mr. A is the senior most and another two say Mr. B is senior most, so there is contradiction, so this way will not work. There's no value because two against two, so both are hujjah, as we say, hujjah shar'iyya, and it is contradicting each other. So we go to the third way, which is called Shia. Shia, when a group of people in which there is no influencing their decision, that we know they are not motivated by certain personal or governmental or political or media. No, different people in the Hawza, they are of different attitudes, different ages, different way of life, for example. And all of them said that I think Mr. So-and-so is the marji'. So you see, in this way, you are getting a natural selection. There is no governmental force, no political force. Even if the government want to force some marji', no, those who are scholars, they will not be under influence of the government because each one will give his view alone without link to others. You see, in my view, this for you is up to you. You go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, and that is what happened, for example, in the last years when, let us say, Ayatollah Sistani, may Allah elongate his life, at time of his beginning of his Marji'iyah, there was a list of more than 50 people of the ulama. They said, we think he is the senior most, and they gave their evidence. Of course, maybe others are there, but now one has to say whether there are two or three equal or one of them is senior most. These are details in fiqh which is discussed. I'm not discussing the fiqh matter because that is we studied already in fiqh. But what I mean as a principle that the Marji'iyah is away of any political or media or let us say effect of people or effect of money or effect or anything. It is between the person, the muqallid, and his marji'. If he is convinced 100% that Mr. So-and-so, or let us say has atmi'nan, he is sure that Mr. So-and-so is senior most, he will do taqlid of him. Of course, his conviction is not out of his own mood. He say, well, my colleague told me, my friend, no, that is out of mood. Your friend, your colleague is not specialized in that subject. But you say, according to my study, in the situation, most of the ulama in Hawza, most of the dignitaries, most of the specialist people, they say so-and-so is a'lam, senior most, and that is why the marji' is elected. So this is the best way and proved to be very good throughout the history. Because Shias, as you know, they lived throughout the history as an opposition to the governments. From time of Bani Umayyah, Bani al-Abbas, after that till today, the governments in different countries were against the Shias because Shias do not agree with injustice, and the governments naturally want to do what they want, and they lived in opposition, and mostly the governments were dictators, where there was no democracy governments in the history that we have seen. So opposition is usually either eradicated by the government or influenced by the government. Now they want to influence the system of Marji'iyah, but they cannot. Well, governments, let us say previous governments in let's say Iraq, Iran, or well, usually these areas, even sometimes in India, old India, Pakistan, there was ulama, maraji'. The people refer to them, but there is no control of the government. The government may like something, the people follow marji' a different way. Actually, if the marji' is known to be he is supported by the government, then nobody of the Shias will follow him. And if the Shia feel that this marji' is appointed by the government, then they will not do taqleed of him at all, because they say he is not adil and this is not the right way. So you see the system of Marji'iyah we have, an election of the marji', or let us say taqleed of the marji', is in such a way that it is purely by the muqallid, the individual decision and conviction about the marji', without any force from outside. So some people, if they accuse that the Marji'iyah is appointed by this radio or this media, that media is not so true. This is a wrong thing. Well, maybe the media say what has happened, that the Shias did taqleed of this as news like any other news. A President X was elected in America or in England or etc. Okay, that is a news, not the media made him. It is a news. So if in the news it will come about the Marji'iyah of the Shia, not that whatever the radio said the Shia has followed. No, that is not right. This is actually an accusation to the system of Marji'iyah, that it is influenced by this radio or these powers or that powers. No, they have no way actually to infiltrate. And this is not a new, it is since 1,000 years till today, or more than 1,000 years from time of غيبة الصغرى and الكبرى till today. غيبة الصغرى, of course, the وكلاء of the Imam al-Mahdi Salamullah alayhi were appointed by him, and غيبة الكبرى when it started till today, that is the system of Marji'iyah. And in the history we see not any government could infiltrate the system of Marji'iyah of the Shias. It is, as I said, the secret behind that it is by a natural selection of the people with their own will, no influence for them. And they know, because the marja' has to be religious, has to be pious, has to be good, has to be away of personal matters, or not doing propaganda for himself or this, that. They know these are the characters of the marja'. So they look who is the real marja' in which I do taqleed, and between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my taqleed is right. So that system is actually the best system. Now, that system of Marji'iyah we have, Marji'iyah has, let us say, two main, jobs. One work of the Marji'iyah is the fatwa, to give fatwa in halal and haram on different issues. I mean, whether in at time prayer, fast, etc., or amr bil ma'ruf, nahy al munkar, even sometimes jihad. Fi sabilillah, they give fatwa. That is one thing. The second thing is running affairs of the Shias in different parts of the world. Now, hardly the people know about the role of Marji'iyah in giving services to the Shia world. Why that is the case? First of all, because the marja' himself do not do propaganda for himself. Otherwise, if you make propaganda, it becomes show, riya, and naturally their a'mal is batil. So they avoid any type of propaganda, to avoid riya or to avoid ujb, to be proud of themselves, and all those moral bad effects, the marja' is away of them. So he will not say, I did this, I did that, I am like this, I am like that. If they say I means he is not that pious that we look for him. He is proud of himself. The marja' is not proud of himself. So the marja' will not say, unless the people come to him and he said, well, okay, we looked among the, let us say, the first class of the scholars, and you are 1, 2, 3, and among the 3 you are the marji', please accept the responsibility and be the marji'. That is usually the case. Not that he come and deliver lecture and make a propaganda and come on TV and come on radio, said, oh people, I am marji', I have these services, I have these books, I have these lectures, I have this media, I have in Facebook like that, in Twitter like that, in YouTube like that, the world. No, that is not the system of marji', to do propaganda for himself. Naturally showed. We read the hadith of the Imam, من كان من الفقهاء صائنا لنفسه حافظا لدينه, protecting himself, preserving his religion, مخالفا لهواه, disobeying his selfish desires, against his hawa working, مطيعا لأمر مولاه, obedient to the orders of his Lord. Mawla is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then فَلِلْعَوَامِ أَن يَقَلِّدُوا, for the public is to do taqleed of him. But now if you want to get the power and get the chair and be the marji', even if he do not deserve, even without anybody in the house saying that he is a'lam or he is one of the 2, one of the 3, one of 5, whom Marji'iyah, maybe he is one of 5 in which you can follow, you can do taqleed, and he want through media and a propaganda force himself to be marji'. Naturally that is not the right system. And the Shias who are educated, they said, no, this man is not the man we look for him. So our maraji', they do great job, great service, I'm going to discuss. But what I mean, why it is not known? Because they do not do propaganda. Secondly, most of the time the governments are against the activities of our maraji'. The enemy is looking what the maraji' are doing and try to destroy their activities. So they do not show, they spend money indirectly, let us say, to orphans, to poor people, to needy people, and those people do not know from where the money has come to them. They will not tell them that this money from the marji'. No. So you are poor, okay, take. In this city you are orphans, okay, there is 50 orphans and widows, you get salary from a businessman, from ordinary man. They think this ordinary man is giving, They do not tell them the marji', because naturally the news will be leaked, and the government, and say historically, till today, if we live in a free country, democratic country, no force, we think that everything is all right. Why not? No, but the case was not so in, let us say, our countries, where the maraji' are there. History of Saddam with Najaf, and before Saddam, and time of Ottomanis, about 550 years, and Abbasis, etc. So that is the history, unfortunately. So the marji' is doing his activities secretly without anybody knows. First, as I said, there should not be any show or source of a pride. Secondly, because of security reasons. Some said, why not? There is a budget for the marji'. He said how much khums has come to him, and from where khums came to him, and where he spent the khums. Like any other charity organization, they declare that this much money came and this much money has been spent. Well, again here, for security reason, it is impossible. Why? Because those who give khums are controlled by the governments. And as I said, usually the governments were anti-Marji'iyah. So they will go to that businessman and threaten him, oh, you have paid this much khums to the marji', you should stop. And the second one and the third one, and try to stop any financial support come to the maraji'. And it is a sort of insecurity for them, because the government may punish them, may put them in jail, as in some of type of the governments in the history. So that is why the money goes completely secretly to the marji'. It's giving us khums, and that is all. The mu'mineen, all, they trust the marji'. If they trust the marji' for their prayer, for their fast, for their ahkam, for their marriage, for their needs, etc., why they do not trust him in spending the money? Why? You see, why we raise hear an objection, okay, where the money has gone. No, where do you think the money will go? Have you seen any marja having so many buildings in different countries and say, okay, this multi-story building belongs to that marja or to this marja? Even to the sons of the maraja. I mean, if we talk in the last 50, 60 years that we remember and we have seen, we haven't seen any son of the maraja or related to the maraja who has buildings and money and millions of dollars, etc. happens. So why accusation to be there? If we put the money in the right hand, why then we create doubt? That doubt actually is created by our enemy. They put it in our mind. Why? Because they want to stop financial support to the Marji'iyah. They want this system to die, to suffer. Well, the same time in the same way in Quraysh, at time of Quraysh, when they did economic sanction against the Holy Prophet ﷺ for 3 years, so they say the Muslims will die of hunger. Well, the same system continues till today. At time of Bani Umayyah, there was economic sanction against Ahlul Bayt. At time of Bani al-Abbas, the same thing. At time of Uthmanis, till today, that economic sanction is there. So actually, it is our enemies who create that doubt in mind of the people. And sometimes the people will accept, oh yes, where the money is going. Okay, what do you think? Where the money is going, You see, the Maraja, they live in a small houses, in very ordinary life, maybe less than any other middle class man, and there is no luxury in their life, even no luxury in their children's life. Maximum if their children got to small house to live, he is owner of a house. Well, to have a house naturally is the right of, theoretically speaking, right of every citizen is supposed to have a house, Now, if the governments are not giving that to the people, that is a problem of the government, Otherwise, that is a normal right for every person is to have his house and live in a house, Renting the house is not the usual system, let us say, in our Middle Eastern countries, let's say in Iraq, Iran, even Pakistan. Usually the people own their house. So if son of the marja, they own a house, that is not something strange, That is usual. The people are usually there. Even in hotels are very less. Nowadays, maybe you can get a few hotels in Najaf or in Qom, for example, but maybe till 30, 40 years, there is no hotels. The visitors used to go to houses of some people. He has a house, and in his house he put 5, 6, 7 people, and he gives them food, and they give him some donation, and that's all. There was no hotel, So what I mean to have a house is the usual. Everybody should have a house, and everybody is living in a house. So what I mean, why to create the doubt, when we trust that he is marja, he is pious, he is just, he is religious, he is working against his selfish desires. So why do we doubt where my money has gone? Naturally, it has gone in the right hands, and it is used in the right way. So that point is to be clear. Now still, some people said, لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, I want to get some assurance, I want to know the activities of the maraja. Of course, as I said, they do not say, they do not write. But those who know about the services of the maraja, they know the details. So what I say, actually, you may not find it. The marja is declaring it, and I am reading what he says. No, what I personally see and know about the situation. First of all, we know the marja is responsible of the hawza ilmiya. The hawza is thousands or tens of thousands of religious students who are studying in the hawzas, and we have, let us say, 2 main hawzas, Najaf and Qom, and there are many other hawzas like in Mashhad, Isfahan, in Pakistan, in India, in Lebanon, and in some African countries, in Indonesia nowadays, and Many countries, they have hawzas, but let us say the two main centers are in Najaf and Qom. Well, even in Iraq, there are hawzas in different cities, but I'm talking just the main hawza. So there are tens of thousands of students who are studying in these hawzas. All of them are getting monthly financial support from the Marji'. You can imagine a number, let us say Shia World, I don't know exactly, but let us say 100,000 students. Now if every student get $50 minimum as a support for financial support, that by itself is a $5 million a month to be there only for the students. Okay, the students have to live in dormitory, we call it a school, or actually the hawza is that dormitory, the school where the students live, not the classroom that usually say this is hawza, this hawza. Actually they mean the dormitory. Okay, dormitory, how much will cost nowadays to build for, let us say, if you spend a house, big house or big school, you spend $1 million. How many you can accommodate there? Well, nowadays Najaf is very costly, Qom is costly. Suppose I say 100 students are there. So you need accommodation, $10,000 per student for his accommodation. And you can imagine 100,000 students, each one needs $10,000. How much money is to be invested to prepare the hawzas in order to be suitable for the students to get proper accommodation? And that is naturally is a huge investment needed. There are many students go to the hawza, there is no school to live. He has to rent a house. And there are always problems with renting the house because every year the law there allows the landlord to increase the rent. And because the budget of the student is limited and the landlord increase according to economic situation, so it reaches a state that he cannot pay the rent. And if he got married, he need separate house, not that, let us say 15, 20 students in one house. Separate house, again, become a bigger problem. But what the Maraji' will do, if the students are married and they rent a house, they pay for their rent. And you can imagine how much big budget is there. Few thousand married students, all they are supported by the Marji' is given for rent of their houses. Well, besides naturally the salary will increase because already he has a wife and children, so he's married, so he needs more. And also, after that, some of them needs medical expenses. And naturally the student has no insurance, medical insurance there, and sometimes the treatment is not free in some of the countries, or the free treatment is not quality treatment because governmental hospitals are low-class hospitals. So he has to go to private hospitals. So if he has any surgery, if his wife got, let us say, delivery and needs expenses, extra expenses for any sickness, for any problem, for any disease, for any surgery, then the Marji' will support. He will go to the Marji' and say, well, I have this problem and I don't know what to do. And the Marji' will support him. So you can imagine millions of dollars are spent every month, for all those, not millions, actually tens of millions of dollars are spent for all those services. Well, till the time he finish his education. And again, when the students go, they become alim after 10, 15 years, alim in an area. In that area, sometimes he goes and the area cannot support the expenses of the alim. So the Marji' will pay for supporting him. Well, if he's an area the people can support him, fine. If not, then again the alim will support him. And in different areas, the people are poor. They ask the Marji' that we need money to build our mosque. So again, the khums money will be given to build the mosque. Now imagine the need for hundreds, rather thousands of mosques. Each mosque, how much will cost? And ultimately, what is the budget for building mosques or building the Hussainiyas as Islamic centers? So that you see the huge expenses if we talk only about religious students, the hawza and related expenses for the hawza. As I said, houses and expenses of the married students or their family and medical insurance and etc. Now you come to another point, help to the poor people in the society, not the religious students, general people. Well, there are tens of thousands lists different maraja have, some of them 45,000, some 50,000, 20,000, different maraja according to his budget. He has a list of, let us say, orphans and widows who are getting monthly support from the marja. Again, that will make a big budget for him that he has to spend and support those poor and needy people. Actually, Iraq was in a disaster from economic point of view because of Saddam and economic sanction and etc. So what Ayatollah Sistani did, instead of himself to be responsible of paying individuals, poor and needy people, he said, why not I trust the person themselves who pay homes to spend his homes on the poor people in his city and in his village and in his locality. So he gave permission for homes, whether Sahm Sadat for poor Sayyids or Sahm Imam for poor and needy people. Everybody is allowed himself to spend the money. No need to send it to the marja. Even expenses of the hawza, the marja said, I will manage myself. Don't worry. I have money from outside comes sufficient. I will manage for the hawza. But all Iraq, millions of Iraqis, whoever has homes, he may give it to the poor and needy people in his locality. So you can imagine how many hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of people got benefit from that system. Well, the same for Afghanistan, because in Afghanistan, it is in a country in disaster and war. He said the Afghanis who have money, they don't need to send homes to the marja. They may spend it themselves according to their knowledge to the poor and needy people in their locality. So you can imagine the system of Marji'iyah in such a way in which we save the country and the people in different areas and in emergencies interfere. When in Lebanon, when suffered a war in 2006 and there are thousands of houses destroyed, then Ayatollah Sistani said to the Wakala that spend all the khums money locally there and no need to send some of it to the hawza, because said we can manage expenses of the students of the hawza, but you spend it on the poor and needy people because now there are tens of thousands of families suffering and they are in need. So all those services, as you see, are there done by the marja. Well, beside, let us say, Iraq and Iran and let us say Lebanon, the Arab countries, the marja has expanded a lot in countries like Pakistan, where there are thousands of students and hundreds of houses. There's about 300 schools built in Pakistan. Well, all that money is with the permission of the marja, and naturally expenses of the students will be given to the student by a representative of the marja in Pakistan. The same thing in India and the same thing in other countries like Azerbaijan and in Turkey and many other countries in African countries. A lot of projects have been built by sometimes direct order of the marja and sometimes indirectly by the representative of the marja. That is another story we have to elaborate. These are activities of the marja himself directly I am talking. I will come to the activities of the representatives of the marja to elaborate that point as well. So the marja sometimes feel that there is need to establish libraries, for example, public libraries, because the Shia books are not many and they are not available in the market. and the people usually are poor to buy the book. So what will happen? No. So they establish libraries like late Ayatollah Sayyid Muhsin al-Hakim in 1960s. He died in 1970. He established a main library, Maktabat Ayatollah al-Hakim al-Amma in Najaf, and then had 66 branches in different cities of Iraq. So in those days where there was no books available, you see all the Shia books in every big, even small cities were available because there is a branch of his library opened in that area. And it was source of education for people. People were educated by reading those books and knowing about what they need to know from Islamic education. Well, beside many branches outside the country, there was a need for schools, primary and secondary school, because the government deprived the Shia areas from sufficient number of schools, like what happened in Iraq, even in Lebanon. That problem is there, and well, other countries like that. So the Maraja themselves started, gave direct order to establish primary and secondary schools. Like in Baghdad, in 1960s, Madaris al-Imam al-Jawad, Madaris al-Imam al-Kadhim, and then a college, Kulliyat Usul al-Din in Baghdad, and then a university, Jama'at al-Kufa, was established, but then the government stopped it by force, and later on was forced to rebuild the University of Kufa, well, because political situation has changed. So what I mean, they are thinking what is necessary for the people. In Lebanon, because there is shortage of governmental schools, they said 1/3 of the students can attend government schools and 2/3 have no school. They have to go to private schools. The government is not building. So now private schools are very important. So big number, tens of schools, private Shia schools were established, and those schools naturally are giving service, educational service to the students. Well, publishing the book, printing the book, there was shortage of books. And the author who write a book, it is not feasible for him, because if he, first of all, he has no budget to print the book. That few $1,000s he doesn't have. Secondly, if he take a loan and print the book, nobody there is to buy it, and then he gets lost economically. Some of the people even sell whatever ornaments for his wife. They sell it and they print the book with the hope that he will get the money, and he will not get the money. So these are, I mean, say, practical problems. So there was a special support for the writers and for publishing the books. For example, late Ayatollah Hakim used to give something about 20% of the cost of the printing as gift to the person to support him. And when he published the book, he buy from him about 20% of the books published in order to distribute it among the libraries, different libraries all over Iraq. So the author, he see there is almost 40-50% of the cost is being covered, and give him permission if some businessman want to support him from Sahm Imam is allowed. So sometimes he will get full, or even if he take loan, later on his loan can be covered by Sahm Imam. So you see how they try to solve a problem which was very acute, let us say, in those days. I mean, now you say, okay, internet available, books are available, but in those days it was not available. Even nowadays in different countries, you do not have many books written, There is not sufficient books in Urdu, for example, even in English or French or Spanish or Hausa language or Indonesian language and so on, Maybe in Arabic or Persian you have enough books, but not in other languages. So what I mean, the Marji' will think about that sort of need for the people, that they need to print books and support them or give them permission for using Sahm Imam for that. This is another point is there. Well, besides that, the Maraji' will guide the Shias that please invest your money in a good causes, unite together to be one hand, because we want you to be financially strong. And that happened in many places, many areas where the Marji' used to guide the people, and well, some of them who listened, naturally they were saved. For example, in Iraq in 1950s and 60s, usually the south of Iraq, the Shias were only having land and use agriculture. There was no factories and not many are in business. So the Marji' with his long vision, he told them that this will not continue. You invest your money in a property or in business in the capital, in Baghdad or big cities, because that will be a source of security for you. And that exactly what happened, because at the time of Abdul Karim Qasim, the president, he did what he called al-Islah al-Zira'i. He divided all the lands from the landlords. There was one landlord who has so many thousands of meters of land. He divided all that and gave 2,000 meters to every individual farmer. And naturally, individual farmer is not capable to cultivate that 2,000 meters of land, and the economy completely destroyed in Iraq. And those who had money, they lost all their lands and all the wealth. And those who listened to the Marji' and invested their money, at least they could have do something else. So what I mean, thinking about the overall general economy of the country. Well, the other point is about political hazards and problems facing the Shias. First of all, general political activities for the Muslim Ummah, naturally the Maraji' were always in the front of defending the Muslim Ummah. Like in the First World War, the Maraji' went into jihad to preserve the Muslim countries from being attacked by non-Muslims. Our ulama have gone to Basra, Shu'aybah, different areas, and at that time was the Ottoman emperor was there as a Muslim, let us say, government, and they wanted to defend that in front of the superpowers invading Iraq. And in 1920, well, again, the same thing, again, the Maraji', they took a stand against, and in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, 60s, that continued till today. And well, before that also was there. There are so many examples. There is no time to go through the details. Actually, it needs one full lecture about it. So what I mean, they were always aware of the political situation facing the Ummah. Not that the Maraji' are sleeping there and they have no news and they only go and give fatwa and sleep and do nothing. No, that is really big injustice to say about our Maraji' like that. They were never sleeping. Always they were number one who defend the rights of the Shias against the dictator governments who rule, because ordinary people are afraid to talk, but the Marji' has the gut to talk. And our Maraji', let us say, throughout the previous history and the recent history, let us say since 100 years till today, we know the examples. The Maraji' took a stand for the benefit of the people against the unjust governments. So that is one point. And now, beside activities of the Marji' himself, well, nowadays many other systems are there. The Maraji' has established huge libraries, which is very much in need, established so many websites, which are needed by the community. Now the system of communication improved by email. You can communicate with them by email, by telephone, by fax, etc. Naturally, they are using all these systems for benefit of the Shias in different parts of the world. Besides that, the system of Marji'iyah is that the Marji' depends on the wakil, representative, in each area. In each area, whether inside Iraq or inside Iran, different cities, the Marji' has a representative there. And in other parts of the world, in Europe, in America, in Pakistan, in India, in Indonesia, in Lebanon, in Africa, everywhere, there is a representative of the Marji'. And the religious dues are given to him. And that representative is using that money for the improvement of the life of the people in that area. So if you count that, actually thousands of projects like mosques and Islamic centers or books or support to poor and needy people or educational support or medical support or different types of support were given to people all over the world by the representative of the Marji'. So that again, a system of activity. One of the good ways that the system of the Marji'iyah is not a centralized one, is decentralized. I mean, not centralized that not all the money go to the Marji' and the Marji' distributed to people all over the world. No, that system is not there, and it is not useful for us and not safe. Why? Because as I said, always the Marji' was under control of the government. So if all money goes there, they will not allow the money to go out for different countries. And then they can control the money will not go in. And then the Shia World will suffer. Now the system of the Marji' depends on activities of his representative. The representative of the Marji' are usually religious people, trustworthy people, just people, honest people, and they, whatever they collect of religious dues, naturally they send partly for the support of the houses to the Marji' and partly is spent, and they bring a receipt from the Marji' to the person that to make sure that the money is being used in a proper way, and then they spend that money, I mean part of the money, locally for any area, any city, any area, whether in America or in Africa or in Indonesia or in India or Pakistan. So the thousands of mosques and thousands of centers and thousands of families who got support and donation, and so many orphanages has been built or houses built outside the country, etc. All that is also part of activity of the Marji', but it is not by centralization of the activity, by decentralization. His representative is doing by the advice of the Marji'. Say, you may use it in this way, this is right, that is not right. So the representative knows what is the fatwa of the Marji', where the money is allowed to use, so he uses it accordingly, and that is for upliftment of the situation of the Shias in different parts of the world. So whatever we see in progress outside is actually a budget of the Marji' which is used in different area. So how come when say blindly and say Maraji' doing nothing and they are taking money, are not aware of the world? Oh, how come? This is really big injustice to say in that way. Then who built all those thousands of centers in different parts of the world? Who give support for tens of thousands of students all over the world? Who has published thousands of books in different languages? By what money those books were published, or thousands and tens of thousands of families who are getting support, actually millions of families who are getting support, and that from where? You need the Marji' that to write always be proud of, I do this, I do that, I did this. That is not the way of Marji'. So it is the system of the Marji'iyah actually which is protected the Shias, thinking very well about the benefit of the Shias, preparing the ground for flourishment in flourishing the Hausa in number, in quality of students, number of students, and the, let us say, dormitory and houses to be built, so that because population of Shias is increasing, so there is need for more and more ulama to be graduated. So the Maraji take care of that as a basic need of the Shias. Now, if in a country, let us say in Canada or America, if an alim comes, the community naturally did not spend for education of this alim. This alim was 10 years, 15 years in Hausa, and now came as a alim to serve the community. But who spent for his expenses for the last 10 or 15 years till he get graduation there? Naturally, the marji'. So if the marji' spent on every alim, let us say in his life, $100,000, naturally that service is given free to the community as a ready alim graduated from the Hausa. Like the governments, support, if they need doctors, for example, they support medical students so that more students will go to medical college and get financial support, the grant, so from the government, and then get graduated so that they will serve the society. So that grant which supported the student all his life till he graduated and came to his country or any other country for tabligh, naturally that support was given by the Marji'iyah. So the role of Marji'iyah is actually vital for the Shia world, and we have to understand that, and we have to respect that, and we have to defend the Marji'iyah and should not listen to the accusations we read here and there in the internet or on the YouTube that criticizing the Maraji'. No, that is actually knowingly or unknowingly they are anti-Shiism, working and supporting the enemy to destroy the source of our power, because we lived, the Shiism remained intact by the system of Marji'iyah. Two main things protected Shiism throughout the history. One is sha'air of Imam Hussain Ahlul Bayt Salamullah alayhim. So people emotionally are linked to Ahlul Bayt, will not deviate away. Secondly, the Marji'iyah, which give them the right knowledge and right direction. So these two systems were the main systems to protect Shiism throughout the history. Now, nowadays we see some people attacking sha'air and some people attacking Maraji' in order to destroy Shiism. We have to defend them, and we have to be aware of that. May Allah protect us and preserve us, and let us be one of the servants of the right true Islam by serving the sha'air and Marji'iyah. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.